Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to talk about the current state of PvP, and the reason I want to talk about that is because I've been doing a lot of PvP lately, since there really isn't much to do in the end game other than go in arena and fight players, and I've been seeing a lot of different play styles and a lot of different builds, and I wanted to give my opinion on the current balancing of things. Also, I want to talk about upcoming changes that might be coming that the devs have said. But before we get into that, if you could hit that sub and like button, that would be greatly appreciated. And let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is fighting styles, and two fighting styles in particular, which is Blackleg and Fishman. Now the reason I singled out these two fighting styles is because these are clearly the two most dominant fighting styles in arena right now. Nobody's really running around with 1SS or 2SS, like there's barely anybody using that. And Rokushiki, people don't use Rokushiki for its actual fighting style, they just use it for Soro mainly, or in the punch move. So these two fighting styles are the only fighting styles that people actually use to use them as they're intended. And the reason for that is because these two fighting styles have amazing scaling. Blackleg, you only need 361 stat points to get 48 or 49 damage, and for Fishman, you only need 375 to get 61 in M1 for both of them. Granted, this is with hockey enabled, but everybody fights with hockey, so it doesn't really matter. So as you can see, the scaling is completely broken. I'm not sure why they have such great scaling, it doesn't really make sense. And for a comparison, you need 560 in sword with greatsword in order to get 50 M1. And you only need 375 with Fishman to get 61. You see the problem here? You see why everyone's running around with these fighting styles instead of just actually using weapons? Now, people who do use weapons, the weapons that they mainly use is greatsword or elo hammer because they have the best scaling. And that's another point I wanted to get into. Swords. Swords have some very weird scaling. Now, longer swords, like heavier swords, they're slower, but they have long ranges and they have higher damage. Short range swords, they're faster, but they're short range and they have little damage. So as you can see, the heavy weapons have 2 positives and 1 negative, and light swords have 2 negatives and 1 positive. So you see how that's bad balancing, why everyone's just running around with great swords and elo hammers and kurabachis, and nobody's really using like golden hook. I mean, I still see a lot of trident users and candy cane users, but like I haven't seen any crab cutlass users like this whole update. Like I used it once or twice, but I have not versed the crab cutlass users this entire Christmas update. So it's clear what the dominant weapons are. Not saying that's a bad thing. Having dominant weapons is definitely not a bad thing. There's always going to be a meta in a game. You can't avoid it. You literally can't avoid a meta. But it's so clear what the better things are in this game that it's completely ridiculous. Obviously, Fishman needs a scaling nerf. That's the first thing. They need to reduce the scaling on that. And secondly, Blackleg, I think they should leave that alone. Blackleg is perfect. Just leave that alone. And for swords, I think what they should do is, well, first off, I think they should reduce, in my opinion, I think they should reduce the amount of stat points you need to get like equal M1 damage to fighting styles. And most people are going to disagree with me on this one because of the range differences. Sword definitely has more range than fighting styles, but you need 200 more stat points in a great sword to just match Blackleg, which doesn't make sense to me. I think they should only be like maybe 150 stat points difference, or even 100. I think 100 is a little bit more crazy, like more on the crazy side. So I think 150 is like perfect, but 200 is just way too ridiculous, because what people are doing is they're running Blackleg or Fishman with a bunch of HP, and they're most likely running a Devil Fruit that has a lot of stun lock, aka Goro, Hiei, Marrow, and they're just running these ridiculous builds that it's almost impossible to take off a stock because they have almost like 600 more HP than you. So it's very difficult for the average player to fight against something like that. Even if the person isn't really that great, if you have that much health, you can basically do anything you want. You really don't have to pay attention that much. You can just kind of throw your body around and just fight however you want, and you don't have to play strategic at all. So that's my opinion on the fighting styles and the swords. The next thing I want to talk about is move stacking. Now this seems to work a little different than it used to, and basically what it is, people are using 2 moves at once. This happened to me recently where a Marrow user used Love Charm and then he used Love Wave immediately, like he was using it at the same time. And I wasn't sure how he did it. I'm not sure how you even complete this action, like how you even perform this, but it's something people can do and they are doing it. I also saw this with Blackleg with Diablo Jambe, and someone was using Sky Drill while M1ing, and then he immediately went into Spectre, which looked completely broken. They died obviously because the damage was ridiculous. So this is probably going to get nerfed. This is clearly broken if you just look at it. Like, it's obviously not supposed to be in the game. But that's just something I wanted to briefly touch on because it did happen to me and I wasn't sure what was happening to me. The next thing I want to talk about is fruit scaling. And what I mean by that is there's definitely fruits in the game where you don't need to put basically any stat points in order to do good damage and to do well with it. For example, like Goro and Hiei, typically people run lower stat point builds with these fruits in order to put more stat points into health or more stat points into their sword. And then there's, on the contrary, there's fruits like Mara or Magu where typically people run 500 plus stat points in the Devil Fruit because that's really how these fruits succeed. They don't really have that much low stat point combo extenders because these fruits don't really do that well when you put low stat points on them. They basically do little to no damage. So I do think the fruit scaling is actually good in my opinion, even though, like I just said, some fruits definitely do better on lower stat points because it leads to people not running the same, like not everyone's running around with everything in Devil Fruit or nothing in Devil Fruit. So I do think it leads to a lot of variety and a lot of different possibilities. Maybe you want to play Magu with low stat points and see how well you do. Maybe you want to play Goro with high stat points and see how well you do. It's really up to the player and how they want to play it. So I do think the fruit scaling is a good aspect of PvP, definitely one of the better things of PvP. And the final thing I want to talk about is the upcoming changes that they're making. And the first thing that they're making is a gunfighting style. They briefly talked about it. It was literally just one Discord message. They said that they will be working on a gunfighting style when they have more time. And I'm kind of interested on how it's going to work because as everybody knows, guns is completely useless right now. Like nobody uses guns. What's the point of using a gun? So I hope the gunfighting style is actually viable and interesting and useful. And hopefully it's not easily PBable, you know, because that would be tragic. And another thing that they're bringing is a combo escape. Now I did briefly touch on this like in another video, but I read through it again and they did say that you can escape stun lock combos, but you won't be damage immune. So you'll be able to escape the combo, but they'll still be able to damage you as you're escaping, which is, I think that's a perfect balance. I should be able to escape the combo, but since you did get to hit me fair and square, you still be able to do damage to me, which is perfectly fine. They also did say it will take a bunch of stamina, and they said you can't spam it, you can't M1 mid combo with it, and you can't escape ultimates like Enkai with it. So it seems like a perfect combo escaping mechanic. I hope that does make it into the game next update. It'll definitely make people play smarter because if it does take 25 or 50% stamina, people would actually have to focus on their stamina build now, instead of just running an arena with literally 0 stat points and stamina because it's practically useless. So hopefully that does make it so builds actually make sense next update, instead of just having high health, high damage builds running all over the place. But that's my opinion on PvP right now. I do think it's a little bit unbalanced, but not in the typical unbalanced. Like there's no one thing that's completely broken. It's multiple things come together that makes it broken. So I do think it's a little harder to balance, which is why they haven't made a lot of changes lately. So let me know what you guys think that they can do in the comment section, what changes that they can possibly make. With that being said, that's my opinion on it. If you guys did enjoy the video, like I said, be sure to hit that sub and like button. I'll see you guys next time.